The third year I had a crush on Troy, he decided to get engaged. After congratulating him like the good friend I was, I started to quietly distance myself. When he wouldn't stop hounding me for an explanation, I told him I was gay. And I lied, telling him I had a boyfriend. A summer breeze drifted through the open window of our dorm room, where Troy was pretending to be asleep, his head resting near my hand. I looked up from the assignment I just finished for my professor and saw the wind gently lift the ends of his hair, revealing a face so handsome it could take your breath away. I thought he looked adorable sleeping like that, and I reached out to flick a little cowlick that was sticking up. Just then, my phone buzzed. I glanced down, and a news alert popped onto the screen. Morgan Corp Air and Mandy Lin of Lin Industries announce engagement. Ceremony expected in the fall. My heart seized. My fingers tightened around my phone, and I bit my lip as a block of ice seemed to sink into the pit of my stomach. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been bitten. "Why'd you stop?" Troy hadn't actually been asleep. He opened his eyes, having felt me pull away. "I used a new shampoo, you know." He grabbed my wrist and nudged his head under my palm, rubbing against it like a cat. I took a sharp breath, gave his hair a couple of absent-minded pats, and pulled away. Trying to act casual, I held the phone out to him. "This says you're getting engaged. Is it true? How come you never mentioned it?" "Oh, that," Troy said, glancing at the screen and scratching his head nonchalantly. "My parents arranged it. They said we're supposed to meet up for dinner in a few days. They booked that little private spot we went to last time. You liked their seafood porridge, right? I'll bring some back for you." So it was true. I couldn't hear a word he said after that. The only thing in my head was that glaring headline, getting clearer and clearer, echoing in the empty space of my mind. Troy didn't know I had a secret. I was in love with him, from the first moment I saw him, from the first time he reached out his hand to me, from the first basketball game he won, from the time I saw him scare off a creep who was following a girl. Every time I saw him, my love grew deeper, but it was a love that was destined to stay in the shadows. I was a coward. Troy saw me as a friend, so I stayed in my lane, never daring to take a single step further. Now, maybe it was time to finally pull the plug on this hopeless crush. Before I could figure out how to slowly fade out of his life, Troy leaned his head against my neck. His warm breath on my skin sent a shiver down my spine, snapping me back to reality. "What's wrong? What did you just say?" "I spaced out and didn't hear you," I said, gently pushing his head off my shoulder. Troy didn't seem to mind. He just pressed his face into my palm. I said, "I'm hungry. What are we getting for dinner?" I pulled my hand back and scooted a little farther away from him. You go ahead. I think I'm gonna head to the library. Then I'll go with you." "You don't have to," I said, cutting him off. "You should go eat. You said you were hungry." I quickly packed my things and, before Troy could say another word, I bolted out the door with my laptop. Troy just stared after me, only snapping out of it when my figure disappeared down the hall. I walked briskly toward the library, my laptop clutched in my arms. My mind was a mess, replaying Troy's words and the news alert on my phone. I wasn't paying attention and bumped right into someone. I stumbled back a step and quickly apologized. But the person called my name with a note of pleasant surprise. "Hey Leo, is that you?" I was a little startled. "Scott, what are you doing here?" Scott was the only other gay friend I had. He was an art student at a school across town. We'd met during a volunteer event, and maybe there's some kind of sixth sense between people like us because we figured each other out pretty fast and quickly became friends. He was also the only person who knew I had a crush on Troy. "My sister goes here. I came to see her," Scott said. He peeked around me. "Where's your best friend? I thought you two were joined at the hip." "It's not that dramatic," I said softly. "He has his own things to do." Scott paused, his expression turning to one of concern. "What happened? You look really down." I ditched my library plans and found a quiet bench with Scott. "So, you're saying he's getting engaged? Then what about you?" Scott looked at me. "What are you thinking? Are you going to tell him how you feel?" I just shook my head with a bitter smile. There was a time when I'd wanted to confess. Back when Troy and I were inseparable. He'd sometimes sling his arm around my shoulders or rest his head on me. In those moments, with my heart pounding out of control, the words were right on the tip of my tongue. To this day, I'm so grateful that before I lost control and told him, I stumbled upon someone else confessing to him. It was a guy from Troy's basketball team, someone I knew he was pretty close to. But the instant the guy got the words out, Troy shot him down without a shred of mercy. I'm not gay. I don't like guys. The guy's eyes were red. I know, but then why'd you say it? Troy glanced at him with disgust and turned to leave. That's disgusting. The guy tried to stop him, but Troy punched him right in the face. His expression was dark, his voice ice cold. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. I heard later that the guy ended up in the hospital and dropped out of school not long after. If I confessed to Troy, I'd probably end up the same way. Maybe even worse. Scott sighed and gave me a hug. It's okay, it's okay. There are plenty of fish in the sea. You just haven't met enough people. Want me to introduce you to some guys? Tonight I'll show you. Crash. The loud noise made both of us whip our heads around. Troy was standing at the corner of the path. An elegant wooden food container lay shattered at his feet. His eyes were locked on us, his face terrifyingly dark. Scott immediately let go of me. Troy walked toward us one step at a time. I couldn't find you at the library, he said, leaning down and wrapping an arm around my shoulder. His voice a low whisper in my ear. So this is where you were. He looked at Scott, his tone strange. Who's this? A new friend of yours? Yeah, I nodded, introducing them. This is Scott. I patted Troy's arm, trying to get him to let go, but he just gripped my hand tighter, refusing to budge. I had to awkwardly lean past him to say to Scott, this is Troy. Scott made a hasty exit that day. Troy, however, was convinced that I'd deliberately ditched him just so I could secretly meet up with Scott. He was so mad he started giving me the cold shoulder. My first instinct was to try and smooth things over, but I stopped myself halfway through. That news alert flashed in my mind. He's getting engaged, I told myself. You need to give up. Stop crossing lines. Stop getting close to him. I started avoiding Troy. We were in different majors, but I used to make excuses to sit in on his classes, just to be near him. I must have hidden it well, because Troy never figured out that the only reason I was there was to spend more time with him. I forced myself to stop. That wasn't something normal friends did. I stopped sharing my schedule with him, stopped going to every single one of his basketball games, and stopped being on standby with water and snacks. Troy's mood got darker by the day. My other two roommates started texting me in secret. Leo, have you guys made up yet? Please just go talk to him. He messages me like 800 times a day asking what you're doing. During the day, I could steer clear of Troy, but at night, I had to face him back in our dorm. Troy would walk past me on purpose, slamming things down to make noise. He probably thought this was just like any other time we'd fought, that he could sulk and eventually I'd cave, say something to make it better, and we'd be best friends again. I knew that if I just said one word to him right now, he would immediately back down, and we'd go back to being best friends. Unfortunately, I didn't want to be his best friend anymore. I looked down at my phone and confirmed my new apartment rental. On the day I moved, I had someone distract Troy so he'd be out of the dorm. When he came back that night, all he found was my empty bed. My roommate texted me, "What is going on with you two? Why did you suddenly move out? Troy just got back, and when he saw your stuff was gone, his face completely changed." Before I could even reply, Troy's call came through. I set my phone aside, ignoring the flood of calls and messages he was sending. Just let it end here, I told myself. It's for the best. He'll never know I like guys. Never know his best friend was secretly in love with him. At least this way, I can make a clean exit in his mind. I collapsed onto my bed, trying to escape everything by sleeping. But in the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by a frantic pounding on my door. I opened it to find Troy standing there, his face a thunderous mask of rage. "Why did you move out of the dorm?" I panicked and tried to slam the door shut. Troy caught the door, forcing his way inside. The door clicked shut behind him. He advanced on me, step by step, and asked again, "Why did you move out?" I kept backing away, avoiding his eyes. Troy grabbed my arm, stopping my retreat. I tried to remind him, "We're in a fight. You're still mad at me, remember? A humorless laugh escaped him. You don't know why I'm mad? His voice was cold as he accused me. You're always so nice to everyone. Always making new friends so easily. You've been my only friend since we were kids, but you have so many friends. Troy's voice started to crack with a hint of grievance. Wait, I cut in, confused. Don't you have a lot of friends? Like the guys on your basketball team. I only joined the team because you said you liked watching basketball, Troy said, pausing for a beat. You think they're my friends? Just say the word and I'll cut them all off. Can you do the same with your friends? I had no idea how the conversation had gotten to this point. I tried to pull it back. We were talking about our fight. Don't change the subject. I don't like your new friend. He looks weird, Troy said with a frown. He's just like those pretty boys who've confessed to me. Stay away from him. Scott does like guys, I said, feeling drained. He was warning me to stay away from Scott. If he knew my orientation, he'd stay away from me, too. You knew? His face darkened again. You knew, and you still let him hug you? I sighed and decided to just throw a Hail Mary. I like guys too. The room went silent for a few seconds. Time stretched on in the silence. I felt a numb, suffocating pain, like a death row inmate waiting for the final verdict. Troy's expression shifted from blank confusion, as if he hadn't understood me, to a terrifying, deepening gloom. No, he said, his eyes locked on me, his hands instinctively tightening their grip. You can't like guys. He was hurting me. I tried to struggle. Let go. He only gripped tighter, loosening his hold only when he realized I was in pain. I took a step back. Troy's hands immediately shot out and grabbed my shoulders. You don't like guys. You don't like guys, right? Troy's expression was dangerously grim. What's so great about those pretty boys? Good news. Troy didn't abandon me after I came out to him. Bad news. Troy thinks I'm sick and is trying to cure me. I sat on a bench in the courtyard of some old-school holistic doctor, texting Scott. Scott replied, I think between the two of you, he's the one who sounds sick. Haha. I typed back with a dry laugh. The doctor said the same thing. So he's taking me to a different doctor. Scott. So you're saying that after you came out, not only did he not leave, but he's watching you even more closely because he's afraid you'll go out and find a guy? And now you two are living together, eating together, and even sleeping in the same bed. Scott. You two are doing all that, and you're still just friends? Scott. He's so controlling, it's less like you have a crush on him and more like he has a crush on you. I didn't know what to say, so I just sent him a grimacing emoji. Scott just replied, dude. Even though Scott made it sound like there was hope for us, I knew the truth. Troy couldn't accept me liking guys because he himself didn't like guys. He genuinely believed it was wrong. I had never been more certain that Troy could never fall for me. We would never have a chance. Who are you texting? Troy's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He was standing behind me, trying to look at my screen. I quickly shut it off. Are you done talking to the doctor? I asked, turning to look at him. Troy's face was sour, and he was holding a stack of paper bags filled with herbs. I asked, is that medicine for me? Troy tried to hide the bags behind his back. No. Young man, the medicine's not for you. It's for him. The old doctor's voice called from inside the house. You should take him to get his head checked. Troy huffed and pulled me up to leave. The Morgan family driver was waiting for us outside the gate. When he saw us, he quickly said to Troy, Sir, your mother called to remind you not to forget Miss Lynn's birthday party tonight. Troy sounded annoyed. I know. I'll just get a ride back then, I said, pulling out my phone. No, Troy said, stopping my hand. You're coming with me. Going to my crush's fiancé's birthday party as his friend? Scott would send me at least 3 that's rough buddy memes for that. I don't want to go, I refused. Troy was surprisingly agreeable. Then I won't go either. We'll just go back to your place. I sighed, trying to reason with him. Troy, you can't keep watch over me like this forever. How do you know I can't? He shot back, completely ignoring my point. In the end, I went with him to the party. The title of Morgan Corp heir was a bigger deal than I thought. The moment we stepped into the ballroom, waves of people swarmed Troy to offer toasts. I took advantage of the crowd to take a few steps back and quietly slip away. A moment later, I left the ballroom and wandered into the garden, hoping to find a back exit and make my escape. "Leo, is that you?" A hushed voice called out. I turned and saw a familiar silhouette crouching by a wall, a plate piled high with food in his hands. "Mark?" I said, surprised. Half a minute later, Mark and I were sitting on a relatively clean stone step. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Didn't Professor Han have you in the lab today?" "I've been stuck in the lab for a week straight. I had to sneak out for a decent meal," Mark said, handing me a small cake. "What about you?" "Oh right, you and Troy are best friends." I didn't really want to talk about Troy, so I changed the subject to some lab gossip. Mark returned the favor with some gossip from the world of the ultra-rich. "And then there's the illegitimate son the Gu family just acknowledged. And his older brother." Mark and I huddled together as he whispered excitedly. "What are you two talking about that's so fun?" Mark and I jumped, immediately sitting up straight. Troy was standing at the edge of the path, his arms crossed, an expression on his face that screamed, "If you don't comfort me this instant, the world is going to end." I got a weird sense of déjà vu. "I've got to go," Mark said, bailing on me without a second thought. Troy sulked by himself for a bit. When he saw I had no intention of placating him, he sat down next to me with a sour look on his face. He watched me for a moment, then snatched the half-eaten cake from my hand and finished it. He really didn't know his own strength. I hesitated, then finally said, "Are you hungry? I can go get you something to eat from inside." As I started to get up, Troy immediately stood and grabbed my hand. I looked at him, completely baffled, and tried to pull my hand free, but he only held on tighter. "So you don't sneak off again the second I'm not looking," Troy said, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. He even sounded accusatory. "You came here with me tonight, and I turn around for 1 second and you're already talking to another friend." I felt a pang of guilt and promised him I wouldn't try to sneak away again, trying to get my hand back. Just then, a cool female voice interrupted. "Troy, what are you doing here?" A woman in a white pantsuit with an incredibly refined air walked over. On her arm was a sweet, pretty-looking young woman. "Mom," Troy said. The woman nodded, then gestured to the girl on her arm. "Come say hello to Mandy." Troy, still holding my hand, walked over and gave the girl a polite nod. "Happy birthday, Miss Lin." Clicked. This was Troy's fiancée, Mandy Lin. "Thank you," Mandy said, nodding back just as politely. Then her eyes landed on me. "And this is my friend," Troy said, and then fell silent, completely lacking the social awareness to introduce us properly. I decided to at least wish her a happy birthday. "Happy birthday," I said to Mandy. "Thank you. She really is a perfect match for Troy," I thought. I smiled to myself. They're a perfect couple from perfect families. A guy like me should just stay out of it. "Leo, you were accepted into Professor Han's grad program, right?" said Troy's mother, Mrs. Morgan. "I was one of Professor Han's students too, so I guess that makes me your senior. The professor was just telling me about you. As it happens, I have a few technical questions I'd like to ask you." Mrs. Morgan then turned to Troy and Mandy. "You two don't just stand here. Go take a stroll through the garden and come back later." After forcefully shooing Troy and Mandy away, Mrs. Morgan turned back to me. "Leo, I know you and Troy are good friends. I'd like to ask you for a favor. Troy and Mandy are getting engaged soon, and I'd like them to spend more time together to get to know each other. But Troy has been so busy lately, he always says he doesn't have time. Could you help me and try to persuade him?" Mrs. Morgan looked me straight in the eye, as if she could see right through me to the pathetic love I held for her son. I managed a weak smile and replied, "I will." That night, when Troy and I got back to my apartment, I decided we needed to have another talk. "Are you planning on sleeping here again tonight?" I asked tentatively. "Shouldn't you be heading back to your dorm?" Troy's brow immediately furrowed. "Are you kicking me out? You heard what the doctor said. I'm not sick. I was born liking guys," I said, taking a deep breath. "You staying here isn't going to change anything. It's pointless." Troy still wouldn't give up. "How do you know you like guys? You've never even dated one. Maybe this is all just in your head." Seeing that he was completely unwilling to accept it, I lowered my head, bit my lip, and said softly, "Because I have a boyfriend." Troy froze, his face a mask of confusion, as if he couldn't process what I just said. I continued, "I moved out so we could live together." Troy's expression twisted into something terrifyingly ugly. He stared at me. "Who? What?" I asked who this boyfriend is. His face snarled, like a wild animal whose prey had just been snatched away. "Is it that Scott guy from the other day? Or that senior from your program? Or that underclassman who's always asking you questions?" "No, you don't know him," I said. I wasn't about to make up a name that could be easily exposed. I kept it vague. "If you can't accept this, you can leave. We shouldn't see each other anymore." Troy let out a cold, bitter laugh, his eyes red. He slammed the door hard on his way out. I let out a breath. A drop of water landed on the back of my hand, and I realized I was crying. I guess we wouldn't be seeing each other again. I never knew breaking up could hurt this much. Troy didn't come looking for me after that day. Life without him went on. I went to class, wrote my thesis, and worked in the lab. Nothing seemed different, but there was a dull ache that throbbed in my empty heart from time to time. Scott couldn't stand to see me like this and dragged me to a bar he knew. The best way to get over someone is to start a new romance. "I'll introduce you to some people," he said, leading me to a booth where 4 or 5 guys were already sitting. He handed me a drink. Not wanting to ruin his fun, I offered my glass to a guy who looked handsome, suave, and like a total player. The man looked up with a smile and reached for my drink, but it was intercepted mid-air. Troy stood there, radiating a dark energy. The veins on the hand gripping the glass were bulging. He didn't look at me. He just tilted his head back, downed the drink in one go, and stood there in silence. I walked over and patted his arm. "Let's go. We can talk back at my place." Troy followed me back to my apartment in complete silence. I sat on the bed, looking at him with a weary heart. "Can you accept that I like guys now? You said you had a boyfriend. Why hasn't he come to see you once in the past month?" Troy ignored my question and interrogated me instead. "How do you know he hasn't?" I bluffed. "I know," Troy said, standing by the bed and staring down at me. He repeated, "I know." It hit me. "You've been spying on me?" I exclaimed. No wonder I'd felt like someone was watching me for the past month. I'd always looked around and seen nothing, thinking I was just being paranoid. "I was just worried about you," Troy said, basically admitting it without a hint of remorse. "And I never saw your boyfriend once. You were lying to me then, weren't you?" We broke up," I lied, trying to cover my previous lie while also hammering the point home about my sexuality. "You saw me at the bar today. I was looking for a new boyfriend." The mention of the bar made Troy's face darken again. That guy was obviously bad news. "Why would you choose him? You didn't even like him." I decided to drop a bomb. "Because I need a sex life." Troy stood there, completely stunned, for a full 3 minutes. But he didn't recoil and run away like I'd expected. He remained planted by my bed. I waited for him to come to his senses and leave in disgust. But after 3 minutes, Troy glanced at me, and then, as if he'd made a momentous decision, he started unbuttoning his shirt. I panicked and grabbed his hands. "What are you doing? If you need a sex life, I can give you one," Troy said, trapping my wrists with one hand while he continued to unbutton his shirt. "Guys out there are dirty. What if you catch something?" I never imagined Troy would go this far for our friendship. I leaned back hard, trying to pull my hands free. "You're straight. You can't get it up for me." "I can take pills for it," Troy said, completely determined as he pushed me down onto the bed. "Wait," I said, completely flustered. "You have a fiancé. We're not engaged yet. I can call it off." "The Morgan family has other options," Troy said, seeming like he couldn't bear to hear another refusal from me. He covered my mouth with his hand. "If you're okay with just anyone, why not me? Aren't we best friends?" His logic was so bizarre I was still reeling from it when I woke up the next morning. "I swear, even after all that, he still says you're just friends?" Scott ranted over text. "Wait, why would he be carrying those pills around? Don't tell me he planned this all along." "No," I corrected him, defending Troy. "He didn't have any pills. He didn't take anything." "Scott, And he still insists he's straight? Me. He said that because I'm his best friend. He doesn't want me to be with anyone else. He can't stand the thought of me leaving him, so he'll do whatever it takes to give me what I want. Scott was speechless for a moment before sending back another dude. Troy was really trying. He never questioned my story and was extremely proactive every day, even starting to research the relevant material. I'd see him frowning at videos and tell him to just forget it. But whenever I tried to refuse, he'd start asking if he was doing something wrong, then get worried I was going to leave him for someone else, which only made him try harder. Scott, I'm seriously questioning both of your mental states. Scott, this is not right, is it? Scott, is he still going to think you're just best friends on your wedding day? I texted back, I'm going to tell him the truth. If he reacts badly, I need you to play along with a little act. It was 2 months into Troy living with me. On an ordinary afternoon, I confessed my feelings. I lied to you before about having a boyfriend. Troy was holding me on the couch while we watched TV. The corners of his mouth had just started to lift in a happy smile when I added, the truth is, I've been in love with someone this whole time. Troy's arms tightened around me. Don't say it, he said in a low voice. I spoke softly. Don't you want to know who it is? It doesn't matter, Troy said, leaning down to kiss me. I calmly accepted his kiss, then said, it's you. It's always been you. Troy froze, staring at me blankly. What about you? Do you love me? Before he could answer, I added, and I don't mean as a friend. I mean as a lover. Troy was still just staring, as if the question had knocked the wind out of him. I don't like guys, he finally managed to say after a long time. I smiled and wriggled out of his arms. I know. That's why we can't keep doing this. You should go live the life you want. No, Troy said, reaching for my hand in a panic. It's okay, I said, gently patting his head. I was just kidding. It's not you. Troy froze again. What? You remember Scott, right? I said. He's the one I've been in love with this whole time. This morning he confessed to me, and he said he loves me too. I said yes. Troy still couldn't process it. What? He said he wants to move in with me. He's not like those other random guys, so you don't have to worry. I said. I thought for a moment and added, we can still be friends. I'm not going to disappear on you. As I finished speaking, a knock sounded at the door, right on cue. I opened it to find Scott standing there with a suitcase. He threw his arms around me in a hug and said in a sickly sweet voice, honey, I'm here. Then he peeked over my shoulder at Troy and muttered grumpily, what's he still doing here? I patted his head and said, he's just about to leave. I told Scott to go into the bedroom, then turned back to Troy, who was standing stiffly in front of the couch. I can pack up your things tomorrow and bring them back to the dorm for you. Okay? I said, walking up to him. I had never spoken to him in such a cold, distant tone before. Troy seemed to sense the finality in my actions, the determination to leave. Did I do something wrong? He asked, reaching for me. When I dodged his hand, it dropped to his side, and he nervously tugged at his shirt. His eyes grew red. Isn't what we have now good? You said you'd never leave me. You didn't do anything wrong. You did great, I said. And I'm not leaving you. Love and friendship aren't mutually exclusive, are they? Are you going to stop being my friend after you get engaged? Troy could never win an argument with me. He just knew, instinctively, that this wasn't what he wanted. So he stepped forward, pulled me into a hug, and sent a silent thank you to his martial arts coach, who was an expert in pressure points. Half a minute later, he looked down at me, sleeping peacefully in his arms, and a satisfied smile spread across his face. When I woke up from the darkness, my last memory was of Troy's sad, hurt expression. Maybe I went too far. I couldn't help but second-guess myself. I should probably comfort him a little when he gets back. Wait, where is this? I stared at the ornate, elaborate canopy above me for a good while before I realized this wasn't my cramped little apartment. The decor was elegant and classic. My memories slowly returned, and I remembered this was one of Troy's properties, an estate he said he got for his 5th birthday. He'd brought me here once, but I'd complained it was too remote and far away, so we never came back. Why was I here? I pushed myself up in surprise, a dull ache spreading through my lower back. I looked down and saw that under the covers, I was completely naked. My body was a roadmap of new and old bite marks and bruises, with the faint imprint of Troy's fingers still on my waist. I was silent for a moment, deciding to give up on trying to understand Troy's bizarre train of thought. I threw back the covers, intending to find some clothes. A silver chain caught my eye. One end was attached to the foot of the bed, the other clasped around my ankle. I tried to remember if I had let him watch anything weird recently. Surely he hadn't come up with this on his own. The door opened, and Troy walked in carrying a tray of food. "You're awake," he said. He set the tray on a table and came over to kiss me. I patted his shoulder, pushing him back a little. "Where are my clothes?" Troy rummaged through the wardrobe and handed me a robe. After I put it on, he gently fixed my hair. I sat on the edge of the bed and swung my foot, the chain on my ankle making a soft, clinking sound. I asked, "Are you planning on keeping me locked up?" Troy knelt by the bed, wrapped his arms around me, and buried his face in my stomach without a word. I lightly ran my fingers through his hair. "I already called off the engagement," Troy's muffled voice said. "So please don't have a boyfriend, okay?" I remained silent. Troy looked up, his voice urgent. "You want love, right? I can give you that. I can be your boyfriend, too." "Troy," I said, my voice calm, as if I had been thinking about this for a long time. "One day you're going to meet a girl you love. You'll marry her, have kids, and grow old with her. You'll have a wonderful life together. You like girls. Even if it's not Mandy, it'll be some other girl. Being with me goes against your basic instincts. I don't want to force you. It doesn't matter. If it's you, it doesn't matter," Troy said frantically. "I'm not forcing myself. Not at all." He lunged forward to kiss me, proving that he was, in fact, very capable. "Wait. Hold on." I pushed his face away, struggling to catch my breath. Troy stayed pressed against me, lifting his upper body just slightly. I looked at him, my right hand resting on his cheek, which was flushed from his urgency. I stroked it soothingly. "You know what I want, don't you?" Troy nodded. He took my hand, his kisses traveling up from my fingertips to the back of my hand. "I love you," he said. "I'm not gay, but I will always love you. Loving you isn't going against my instincts. Loving you is my instinct." My eyes started to burn. I cupped his face and leaned in to gently kiss the corner of his mouth. "That sounds like a perfect answer. So can I be your boyfriend, please?" Troy asked, peppering my face with little kisses like a puppy. "All right, then," I said, smiling as I lay back on the bed. I wrapped my arms around his head, my fingers combing through his hair. I said softly, "Boyfriend." I started our relationship always expecting the day Troy would break up with me. But 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years passed. Even after I agreed to marry him overseas, Troy was still as clingy as he was when we were young. By then, Mandy had married another young man from the Morgan family. She didn't seem to care who her husband was and moved in with Troy's mother after the wedding. When Troy and I visited, we'd see her trailing by Mrs. Morgan's side, as quiet and sweet as she was years ago. Scott went abroad to study painting under a famous artist. It was Troy who had arranged the introduction, hoping it would get him as far away as possible. It wasn't that Troy hadn't seen through our act back then. He'd figured it out soon after he took me to the estate. He was just still petty about the fact that Scott, during his many on-again, off-again breakups with his own boyfriend, would call me in the middle of the night, giving me an excuse to make Troy sleep in the guest room. Troy faced a few bumps in the road, but he eventually took over the Morgan Group smoothly. I also got into the research institute I wanted and continued down the path I loved. Maybe one day Troy and I will go our separate ways, or maybe we'll get to spend the rest of our lives together just like this. As I was thinking this, Troy's arm wrapped around my waist. I turned my head, and we shared a kiss.